go ahead and introduce our wonderful teacher, Phil Haag. But looking at you guys, I think you all know him, so I don't know that he needs much of an introduction. But we're going to be team teaching this class, but I'm going to have Phil begin today. And a little bit about what's on his heart and kind of what we want to cover. And I'm sitting here because I'm his tech person. So ignore me. I love it. And then I'll just do the tech when necessary. So
that's when I knew it was close to being time to retire, when I said, I don't want to learn this. So this will be our, what do we call this? We call this the gift of years. And it's sort of an oxymoron maybe, but we're hoping that to show that maybe it's not in the coming weeks. So we're going to have it'll be a 6-week course, and Stacy and I are going to divide it up. And first of all, I know that most of you are not qualified to be in here. I recognize that. Certainly I'm not. But that's part of the thing, really. I was thinking about this class, and it is a class that's really close to my heart because, come on in, because I realized that I needed to change my whole outlook on this aging deal I'm going through. So, it took me a long time to realize and agree that I needed glasses, for instance. Well, it's taken me a long time to come around to the fact that I'm a senior citizen, right? And I kind of remember when it first occurred to me. I mean, it's like the old metaphor of how do you boil a frog? You don't throw them in hot water; it'll jump out, whatever. But if you boil them slowly, increase the heat, you don't notice. Well, that's kind of the way it was for me. I'm just kind of cruising along. I notice aches and pains. I notice difference in views or whatever, and I notice that I'm not quite getting a lot of attention these days with all that kind of stuff, and then one morning I woke up and it's one of those, one of the blinding flash of the obvious. You go, oh yeah, I guess I'm old, and I kind of got the idea because as I was going along, I was, just like everybody else, you realize that you're kind of like the Hollywood stars, right? They're kind of aging out, and I kind of feel like I'm sort of aging out and no longer really feel particularly needed or useful, or at least a lot less needed and a lot less useful. And we still see our kids, but I notice the grandkids aren't coming around quite as much, and all that kind of stuff, and they got their lives, and we kind of become a little bit of an afterthought, unless you're babysitting, of course, but or dog sitting, as the case may be, we used to have position in life or status in life or, whatever, a job, and that kind of gave you some sort of sense of personality, importance or whatever, and even though it wasn't really, from a spiritual standpoint, it wasn't necessarily that important, but you still feel needed, and then when that goes away, you start to wonder, well, maybe I'm not so needed. I used to live off a to-do list. Everybody have a to-do list, So I had a to-do list, and I had a second to-do list that said which were most important. Then I had a third to-do list, the ones I'm ignoring, and that kind of stuff. And then, so when I no longer had much of a to-do list anymore, I'm kind of casting about. I'm going, well, what am I doing? I'm not doing much anymore. What am I accomplishing? And so I made a to-do list so I could feel like I'm accomplishing something. Make coffee in the morning. No, so it was very creative, and so it's and of course, the physical diminishments. up until very recently, and I'm 74, I was not accepting the fact that, things aren't necessarily going to get better anymore. So I've been going to physical therapy for my back for 3 years. I'm going to get surgeries, all this kind of stuff. But it's it's just part of the deal. And then there is the whole forgetfulness thing, obviously. And so one of Paul Keith, you probably all know Paul. He and I walk around the lake together every week, and but we have sort of a understanding that when we're in the middle of a conversation and I'm saying something or he's saying something and we lose our train of thought right in the middle of the conversation, we don't even mention it, we just move on. It's just one of our operating rules, Anyway, and then the other thing that really struck me is one time I'm leaving the church, and it was after an evening meeting, so there really weren't that many people here, and the parking lot wasn't that terribly full, and I go out there, and I'm, of course, looking for my car, and I have one place I park right there in the corner, and if I don't park there, I'm toast. I can't toast. So I'm walking out, and I'm looking around, and I'm thinking no one's watching me anyway. And then Scotty Wyman's there, Hey, Phil, can't find your car?
Who is how many years older than you? Like 10 years older than you?
That's right. Exactly. So, whatever. I said, no, I really can't. So anyway, and then so I started to look for scripture, I thought, well, okay, scripture's been sort of the go-to principles in my life. So now, Madam.
Yes, here we go.
Oh, by the way, I meant to start this whole class off with, you know how professional football players or sports players, they're getting ready to retire and they have their last season and everyone gives them accolades. Well, this is Stacy's.
Last class.
Last round, last class, and yeah. But I feel particularly privileged to be here with Stacy, and we all should feel that way. And we love you, Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been a huge part of the church for so long.
And you guys for me.
Don't go.
No, don't do that. Retirement's good. So I went to some of the scriptures, and so it starts off kind of. There's some good ones and bad ones, of course, for us. It says, "For my life is spent with grief, and my years with sighing. My strength failed because of mine iniquity, and my bones are consumed." All right, I get it. I was a reproach among all mine enemies, but especially among my neighbors, and a fear to my acquaintance. Those who see me in the street hurry past me. I am forgotten, as good as dead in their hearts. I'm getting depressed. For I have heard the slander of many. Fear was on every side. While they took counsel together against me, they devised to take away my life. I don't really sense that that's happening, but I do feel like I'm an afterthought most of the time these days. Anyway, whatever. Oh, I don't care. I'm fine. That wasn't for sympathy. That was. But
this psalmist could have been.
The psalmist is
in their later in life.
Yeah, that's right. They absolutely were. Mm-hmm. Okay.
On the other hand, there are some positives in Scripture, and Stacy's going to talk about some more of these in a little bit. Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness. I'm pretty sure that means gray or silver. Yeah.
That's my sense.
Or white.
The glory of young men is their strength. Gray hair, the splendor of this gray hair is a theme. Job, is not wisdom found among the aged? Psalm 92:14. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will still stay fresh and green. And that's, hey, come on in. And that's really kind of one of the themes of the class, and Stacy's going to introduce some of that in a second. But the idea is that, we're at a different stage of life, and it may be, toward the end, whatever. But we have opportunities. It's less burdensome if you think about all the opportunities that you have, because there's just a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of freedom now. We have a lot of time, and all this kind of stuff. So,
Sorry.
that's all right. Isaiah, even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. This gray hair thing.
Yep.
I am He who will sustain you.
And it's plural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's actually a good thing. I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you, and I will rescue you. Okay. Is that about it?
No, you got a few more.
Oh, I do. Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Isaiah.
Leviticus.
Oh, Leviticus. I'm sorry. I read that. Yeah. So I never read Leviticus, but this one sounds good. Stand up in the presence of the aged. Show respect for the elderly and revere your God. I am the Lord. And then now into the New Testament in Timothy. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. And then Corinthians. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed every day.
That's good news. You came up with the list.
I'm just the messenger. Okay, let's see. That's it. Okay. Thank goodness. So, kind of the idea though is, we always talk about living long, but kind of what we want to try and switch to here is, instead of living long, live well into our aging years, right? And if we haven't started living abundantly in our Christian walk, now's the time, and because it may be, the best time. So we have like a few minutes. I'd be interested in hearing if anybody has any thoughts on some of the, not the negative stuff about aging. We all know that, but some of the positive things that you may have experienced, if you care to share.
Phil, I had some positive things, but I forgot them.
Thanks, Nick. That's good. That's good. I have one. I think, cataract surgery happens when you're old, right? That was kind of nice. I don't have to wear glasses anymore. I got 20/20 vision, supposedly. So no one else has anything good to say about it. Okay, David.
Well, a thing that occurs to me is the slowing down of the left brain function, or the computational aspect, has allowed me to be more aware of the right brain function, or the sense of others and the larger world in which we live. And I think that aspect of mental function actually can increase in older age.
Yeah.
And our society doesn't honor it.
Right.
It honors the left brain more. But there's a lot on the right hemisphere that is waiting for development in later life.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Jeannie.
So I would say that there is no substitute for life experience. There's no, let me say it again, there's no substitute for life experience. And it really shows up for me in the workplace. I work with all different ages of people. And where it comes out, when you're having to interact personally, you're talking about an issue, whatever, and just the different ways that people express themselves. So some of us know how to set up something in a positive way, not necessarily saying, well, let's not do this, this is not what we want, but saying, oh, well, let's do it this way, this is what we want, and things like that just come with life experience and, many interactions with people and learning what works and what doesn't work. And I would say that most people in this room have mastered that quality. And that's such a wonderful quality to have with your adult children, with your friends.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to be overly, self-conscious about saying, but I think we do accumulate some wisdom as we get older. We don't. I'm not saying that with any pride. We better, yeah. Drew, yeah. I'm sorry, Patty. Next, Drew.
I know that I now pray differently. I experience God differently. I'm more at peace than I believe I've ever been. And I enjoy the richness of relationships with having a little time to do that instead of being busy with other stuff. And that's been just a wonderful gift.
Take up photography. Yes.
I have a question for Stacy. You led a class some time back that you started with the divisions of our lives.
I did, yes.
And the thing that struck with me at that time, and I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but that the last portion is meant for a different kind of life.
It is.
What was that?
Well, I'll get to that. I'm going to reprise that in just a minute, but thank you for remembering that, yeah.
I question the wisdom because I see in our culture today that what we consider wisdom is not necessarily where our young people are being brought to. I'm hesitant to share my wisdom even with my family on some issues.
Well, it's interesting, you're assuming wisdom might have to do with advice or counsel. Wisdom isn't necessarily just advice and counsel. Wisdom can also be about knowing how to hold space for people and knowing how to create community, create, places where you may have no advice or counsel at all. I mean, it can, but you're right. Advice and counsel is not necessarily welcome. Just because we know a lot doesn't mean they care at all. Right. That is very, very true. And that's part of wisdom. That's part of this Christ-centered, abundant life as an elder. An elder isn't a know-it-all. There's a difference between a know-it-all and someone with the wisdom to be able to hold the pain and the weight of the younger generation in a way that they want it done. You're right on a really important point, which is why so many older people feel unappreciated, right? They don't want to hear from you. Because I have advice and counsel and no one wants it. I have a spoon collection and no one wants it. I have china and no one wants it. I have antiques and no one wants it. No, I'm sorry.
I was just going to mention that living abundantly also, what I have found is that life comes full circle. Mm-hmm. You may have, something may have happened years ago and you have questions and you get answers. I think what I've learned is you don't get answers right away.
No, you don't.
But in your lifetime, you will get the answers to questions or things that happen or injustices or truths you didn't know. And that's what's really amazing, and to what this gentleman back here said about a sense of peace.
Yeah.
Wow. I totally relate to what you said earlier about feeling displaced. I go out and pick weeds in the garden, like, or, you know, set up your own little kettlebells or boxing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right, sure.
And so I'm looking forward to your wisdom in this class.
Well, what I want to do is give a little bit of a background. I'm coming at this from my own interest. And I want to start with a quote that I did use in the other class. James Hillman was an American psychiatrist, and the book that this is from is called The Force of Character and the Lasting Life. But in that book, here is the question he asked. What did God have in mind when God designed the aging process? You know, we tend to look at the aging process as an enemy, and certainly our culture looks at it as an enemy. And you know how many billions of dollars are made every year in America on products to make us younger? I mean, face creams alone. I think it was $1.8 billion last year. I mean, that could feed a lot of people, couldn't it? So we as a society definitely look at this as an enemy. But I want you to think as a person of faith. I want you to think about that psalm that talked about old age and gray hairs being part of God's plan, and that God leads young people as surely as God leads the people with the gray hairs. And y'all remember, in biblical times, y'all know how rare gray hair was? Yeah. Think about it. They didn't live that long. So, I mean, you got to think in their mindset, right? But that God was the God from first breath to last breath. That hasn't changed. That is still the truth. And if that's the truth, then God has a plan for us. And guess what it includes, my friends? Aging. So what is it that God has in mind? And he is known for this thought, which I love. It will either resonate with you or it will not. He says God's plan is to mellow our souls. That if we live long enough, like a good wine, I don't know anything about winemaking. I like wine, but I don't know anything about winemaking. If we live long enough, like a good wine gets aged in cracked, he says, I don't know if this is true, he says the best way to mellow a wine is in an old wine cask. Maybe one that has cracks and one that's been used before. Now, Jesus talked about new wineskins. We're not going there. Okay, we're not going there. But that God's intent for us in the aging process is to work on our souls. When I started my work, I'm in a program at Oblate Seminary in San Antonio. And when I started the program down there about 2 years ago, and this concept was first, introduced to me, I'm in a program with people about 20 years older than I am, okay, most of whom are nuns and priests who've been doing this whole church thing a lot longer than I have, right, and who never retire, by the way. They don't ever retire. And this idea of the aging process, which I was just starting to kind of move into as an important part of God's plan for me to mellow my soul. It took me a time to kind of take that in and to even embrace it and to certainly believe it. But here's what he says. It's a huge mistake to read the signs of aging as indications of dying rather than as initiations into another way of life. And that's what we want to be talking about these next 6 weeks. And what if there is another way to live than we lived in our 30s, 40s, and 50s? Okay? Y'all should say, yeah, I don't want to live. Do you really want to be 30 again? Did anyone in this room want to go back and be 30 again? Not for a moment would I do it. I just spent the weekend with my 30-year-old daughter, and she has a good life. I don't want it. I don't want it. Each physical diminishment, and this is his belief, and you don't have to believe this, but I'm telling you, I think it's true. Each physical diminishment is designed to mature the soul. I want you to think about that. designed to mature the soul. And they do this work without our consent, relentlessly and ruthlessly. He also is known for saying the aging process eventually will turn us all into monks. And that's because, you can't sleep through the night, can't do a lot of things that you could do before. And that indeed is its plan, just as the process in our younger days pumped us full of hormones so that we would do certain things. Again, God is in on this conspiracy. Aging isn't always pleasant or easy, but there is a rhyme and a reason to the process. I think half of the battle is changing the mindset from fighting this and seeing it as an enemy to moving into it as part of God's plan for us. And that there's a good side to this plan. And that's going to be the mellowing of our souls. I think this is really important, and it's why Phil and I want to spend some time looking at this and looking at Scripture. I have another wonderful author that you can read. Her name is Kathleen Singh. She wrote The Grace of Aging, The Grace of Living, The Grace of Dying. Those are 3 of her books. This is how she says it. The process of aging and dying is exquisitely calibrated to bring us into the realm of the Spirit. That this brings us into that realm. There's wisdom in the aging and dying process. Here's what it's designed to do. It breaks down our ego. It will do for us what a deep life of prayer and selflessness was meant to do for us, break our selfishness and open us to the realm of the Spirit. The process of aging and dying has a clear intent. God will get us one way or the other. And that can be funny and lighthearted, but in reality, spiritually speaking, this is the time of life. And every culture, every religion, actually, this isn't just a Christian idea. This is something that you can read about in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Judaism. This idea that this last section of life is reserved. And it's not reserved for everybody. We all have loved ones who didn't get this opportunity. I can't do this without thinking about my best friend from high school who didn't live beyond 55 because of ovarian cancer. So every time I want to complain about aging, I have to think. Not everyone gets this part of the plan. But because we're sitting here and breathing, we do. We do. Today. We have today. That's right. That's right. So that is the mindset I'm coming with, pretty much the mindset that I think Phil has as well. And so I just want to be honest with you about that. That's kind of where we're coming from. So for this aging, this mellowing of the soul to happen, you might want to call this maturity. We like the word maturity. That doesn't sound as bad as aging, right? For this maturing, these are the things that happen. There's some transitions that need to be made. And the reason I want to show you these transitions is as we move to the Sermon on the Mount, I think you're going to see these same transitions and transformations being discussed by Jesus. From resentment to gratitude. This last part of our life is not a time for resentment, friends. It's a time for gratitude. From bitterness to forgiveness. Bitterness to forgiveness. This is not a time of life for bitterness to, if you think the younger generation doesn't want to hear from us, just put a little bitterness in there and see how much less they're going to want to hear from us. From imagination to faith. Because faith is sturdy and strong and not just a flight of imagination. From wishful thinking to hope, from sophistication to childlikeness, from control, to surrender, and from achievement to fruitfulness. They're not the same. Scripture talks about bearing fruit. It doesn't talk about checking off to-do lists. It doesn't talk about, a resume. It talks about bearing fruit. from being driven by the need for recognition and significance to accepting our anonymity within the body of Christ. This whole thing of stepping out of a position in the law firm or in a church or in a school where you had some kind of place and you could get recognition and you were significant. What if retirement isn't an anomaly? What if it really is going back to what we were created to be as a member of the body of Christ, which is just simply an anonymous net dragger, if you want to listen to the sermon today, an anonymous person carrying the net along with the rest of the community. What if that's what we were really created for? Not necessarily to be a senior associate pastor or a partner in a law firm or something like that. These are the wonderful things to think about, actually, that you don't think about when you're younger. So these are the things we're going to be looking at as we talk about the gift of aging, or the gift of years. It was Phil's idea that we do this by looking at the Sermon on the Mount. And I think it's a beautiful idea, because if you want to go basic, what is it, if we want an abundant life and we want to live into these last years in abundance, where would we go for guidance? And there really isn't a better place in Scripture than the Sermon on the Mount. These photographs, believe it or not, are taken near the Sea of Galilee on a trip that I took to Palestine, Israel, depending on what you want to, Palestine actually. And it is the place where Christians go to remember Jesus' teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. And there's a little mountain, there's lots of beautiful pasture, there's a little church. And so the pictures you're going to see are actually photographs I took from that place. Is that where Jesus said all these things? I don't know. But it's where Christians go and remember all those things. So the Sermon on the Mount is what we call the 5th, 6th, and 7th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. And if you are trying to share Jesus with someone who doesn't know Jesus and you want to give them a good introduction, I would always say, why don't you just give them the Gospel of Matthew and say, read these 3 chapters? Because I think you can get a real good read on what the Christian life is supposed to look like and who Jesus was reading these 3 chapters. It's a collection of teachings and sayings of Jesus that may or may not have all been said at one time. It's a fairly robust collection. It's placed by the author of Matthew at the beginning of his ministry, like right after the temptation and the calling of the disciples. It's like the very first thing that happens. These 3 chapters highly influential in Christian ethics and in Christian thought. Again, non-Christians really appreciate these 3 chapters. And when Jefferson decided to cut up the Bible and only take out the things that were important, this was his main thing. He was like, all people, all deists should pay attention to the Sermon on the Mount. The teaching here is really putting Jesus in the place up on top of a mountain as a second Moses. And part of what happens in the Sermon on the Mount is he's reinterpreting the law. And so we could have a whole class on how Jesus takes the law of Moses and tries to, but we're not going to do that. But I just wanted y'all to know that that's a big part of it. His foundational teachings here are about righteousness, mercy, humility, prayer, ethical living. And so it covers a lot of territory, but it emphasizes mainly the inner heart and intentions over just obedience. And that's what makes the Sermon on the Mount so difficult and easy at the same time. Let me see if I can explain that. Difficult because to live the way the Sermon on the Mount is telling us to live is almost humanly impossible. Easy because it's so clear. You know, don't judge the log in your neighbor's eye until you take the speck out of yours. That's pretty darn clear, isn't it? Yeah, pretty darn clear. You are the light of the world. So don't hide your light under a basket. Pretty clear. But anyone who's ever felt judgmental about anyone knows that that speck is pretty hard to take out of your eye. And putting your light out into the world, come on, if we were all doing that, this world would be a much different place. So that's what I'm saying. It's easy and hard. I think the most important thing about the Sermon on the Mount and why Phil chose this, and I think it was a really good choice, is it is not a set of rules. It's not the 10 Commandments of the New Testament. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to a transformed way of living. And that's why Phil chose this, because this last part of our life is also an invitation to a transformed way of living. So that's my background on. It does call for the transformation of both the heart and the soul. Does anyone know how it begins? Y'all know how it begins, right? The Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5, verse 1 through 11. They are called the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes. And remember, the word blessed in Hebrew also means happy. And so if you have a modern translation, it might say happy are those instead of blessed are those. Meaning what does make for a happy life? Not just blessed, but what makes for a happy life? I might also say, what does a mellow soul look like? If we are really about, if that is God's design for us to have our souls mellowed while we are still on this earth, what would that look like? And this is what the Beatitudes say. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain. After he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to speak, and he taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, they'll be called the children of God. And then blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. In the same way they persecuted the prophets that were before you." These are the Beatitudes. I know you have read them, you've heard them many times before, but this is what we're going to be focusing on for these next 5 weeks as we look at what life would be like for us if we live into our calling to be elders living an abundant, Christ-centered life. It's a high calling. It's a high calling. First of all, not everyone gets to this place in life, like we said before, and gets to do it. And secondly, not everyone has the fortitude, the energy, the desire, because of all those things I listed before. Bitterness, unforgiveness, the wanting to hang on to success. And I mean, there's so many forces in our culture in particular that would keep us from living like this. It would definitely keep us from living like this. And have you ever tried to teach a Sunday school class where you were with like 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds talking about these things? Forget about it. Seriously, it makes absolutely no sense to them. I'm not sure it's meant to make sense to them at their stage in life. It does make sense at our stage in life. So here's what we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. This is another picture from the place, that place near the Sea of Galilee. We've got 5 weeks left, and the 5 things that we're going to be talking about that make for an abundant life as we age are prioritizing love, blessing others, as opposed to giving them our wisdom and advice. And it's funny, that's not the same. It's not the same, darn it, you know? Okay, so I spent the weekend with my youngest, who's potty training my second grandchild right now. And he's 2 years and 3 months. How many 2-year-old with 3 months? I know, okay. So no one cares my wisdom, which is, this is too soon, you know. So they're going to a Montessori school, so there's this whole thing. There's this whole thing you do, you know, and you start at 2, you know, and you know, you set a timer, you put them on the toilet like every 20 minutes. And then, you know, then you do it. And so it works because, I mean, every 20 minutes, you know, eventually, chances are, you know, it's going to work. So when I got there, this had been going on for 5 days, I guess. We were on the 5th day. And Gabe comes up to me and he says, I'm potty training. And I said, good, how's it going? It's hard. And then he goes, but I can do hard things. He's 2 years old. I'm like, okay, Montessori, I love it. I can do hard things. My wisdom, having, you know, had lots of kids and other grandkids, is this is really too young. You know, this is not a good idea. Did I say that? No. What I did, because I've been working on this for a while, is I blessed them in what they were doing. How wonderful. Yeah. He is really catching on. And this little thing about I can do hard things, and you know, and he's, you know, sometimes doing it. So I mean, whatever. But do you see the difference? Yes. Yeah. And it is hard. It does not come naturally. It does not. That's why people who bless are so beloved, because there aren't a lot of them in the world. And I believe that is our calling. That is what we are called to do. And I'm going to have to quit full-time work so I can do it. I mean, it is that, seriously, it is that important, and it is that something that you have to be so intentional about. And I don't mean just your kids and grandkids. You know, I'm talking about the woman who is checking you out at the grocery store. I'm talking about, you know, sometimes your doctor or your lawyer. I mean, it's interesting how many opportunities there are. Anyway, I digress. Love, blessing, forgiving. There was a book written not long ago called The 4 Things to Say That You Need to Say Before You Die. And I forgive you, and please forgive me, are 2 of the 4. I mean, this is huge. Letting go, bearing fruit. So these are the things we're going to be talking about. Yes, sir?
You know about the Dead Man Walking book in the story. Mm-hmm. But the woman who was raped and her fiance or whatever was murdered wrote a book called Forgiving the Dead Man Walking. And in it she says, forgiveness is not something you do for the other person.
Exactly.
It's something you do for yourself.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that. But even the Beatitudes bring that up. And Jesus has a whole section in the Sermon on the Mount about forgiveness. I mean, it is not opaque. I mean, it is very clear that we are called to forgive. In fact, it's even in the Lord's Prayer, which is also in, you all know the Lord's Prayer is also in the Sermon on the Mount. It's not a very long prayer, and guess what's right in the middle of it? You know, forgive us as we forgive those. Yeah. So it's huge. So these are the things we're going to cover in the next 5 weeks. This is a poem. I'm not a great poet, and I'm not into poem. This is the actual chapel that you go into at the top of the mountain, at that place where we remember the Sermon on the Mount. But this is a poem. I don't know if you can read it. I'll go ahead and read it to you because I kind of want to I want to think about, Phil is completely correct, and it's very funny to think about our old age and all of the diminishments that we face. And we've got to be honest about it. It's true, and it's going to happen. And not only our physical diminishments, but the diminishments of the way we're going to be looked at and the way we're going to be seen by our culture. It's all very true. But if aging is also part of God's plan for us, and if God has a purpose in this process, even with all the ragged edges to it, I think it's important for us to continually think about we're never really finished. There's always something new that God is calling us or allowing us to do. And this poem is just a wonderful example of that. And this is how he says it. The old song of my spirit has wearied itself out. It has long ago been learned by heart, so that now it repeats itself over and over, bringing no added joy to my days or lift to my spirit. It's a good song, measured to a rhythm to which I am bound by ties of habit and timidity of mind. The words belong to old experiences which once sprung fresh as water from a mountain crevice fed by melting snows. But my life has passed beyond to other levels where the old song is meaningless. I demand of the old song that it meet the need of present urgencies. Also, I know that the work of the old song, perfect in its place, is not for the new demand. Just spend time, with a 30-year-old, or maybe even a 40-year-old. Live their life. Watch them go to work. Watch them take care of children. Watch them take care of their social group, because friendship groups are really important to them. Watch that happen. And go to work. And it's not that you don't know that rhythm, but that old song is not really going to meet the new demand that we're living in. And so he says, I will sing a new song. As difficult as it is, I must learn the new song that is capable of meeting the new need. I must fashion new words born of all the new growth in my life, my mind and my spirit. I must prepare for new melodies that have never been mine before, that all that is within me may lift my voice to God. How I love the old familiarity of the wearied melody. I just want y'all to think about that. How I love the old familiarity of the wearied melody. Because we do. I do. How I shrink from the harsh discords of the new untried harmonies. So teach me, Father, that I may learn with the abandonment and enthusiasm of Jesus, the fresh new accent, the untried melody, to meet the need of the untried morrow. Thus I may rejoice with each new day and delight my spirit in each fresh unfolding. I will sing this day a new song to thee, O God. It's a beautiful way of thinking about whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60. We're not done. And there is a new song to be sung. I get to sit in a situation where I see people do this all the time. I've watched people move into an assisted living facility, which I think most of us would say that's not something we want to really picture, we want to do. But I've watched people do it and do it with gusto and grace. It's like, okay, this is my community now. And I'm telling you, at Belmont, there's a crowd of people who know everything that's happening and keep up on everyone. And it can be kind of funny sometimes. Sometimes it borders on gossip, I guess. But what it says is just because we've moved here does not mean we've stopped making friends. We've stopped praying for people, caring for people, watching out for things. So it inspires me. It inspires me because I get to watch that in action all the time. I watch you guys, I watch my parishioners move into new places, new parts of aging, and there's not a right or wrong way to do it, but I'm telling you that when your heart and your spirit is open, God is there, and new things happen, and new songs get sung. I want you to look closely at these Beatitudes. This is how I want to end today. And I want you to think about your 30-year-old self or your 40-year-old self and think of yourself today. And do you see in one of these Beatitudes something that you understand now as a person with age and wisdom that you would not have seen or not understood at 30? How could those who mourn be happy? How could those who are meek be happy? How could those who are merciful be happy? Has aging or wisdom or your life experience changed the way you would think about this or inform the way you think about this?
I focus right now on peacemakers.
Tell me about that.
Well, there's so many opportunities to join in the anger.
The anger is easy.
And the blaming.
And the pointing fingers.
And I have a choice in how I react to that.
And probably at 30 or 40, you wouldn't have thought as much about that choice.
It's very opinionated, and it's my way or the highway. Yeah. Really. Yeah, not anymore.
So I'm going to tell y'all a secret. I had a young colleague once say to me, I don't like being with older people because they're just so set in their ways. And I said, how old are these people you're talking about? I'm serious. Right. I'm like, you must have been around 40-year-olds because the 70 and 80-year-olds I'm hanging around, they're having to they're loosening up a little bit, And I thought that was such an interesting, I don't like being around older people because they are so set in their ways. And now this is a really young person. And so I was like, wonder what kind of older people and I thought, what a horrible stereotype, and I totally shamed him by saying, well, let me tell you about some 70, 80-year-olds I know and how flexible they have become and how broad their vision has become and how, Now, not everyone, but that's what you're seeing this and saying, no, I think that this has changed for me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What else? Yeah.
But I think
Andy?
that illustrates the point that the conversation about aging typically starts with the wisdom that we can impart.
Yeah.
What we can give back.
Right.
And I think it's a two-way deal.
It is.
And I personally take pride in, hey, I changed my mind on this.
Me too. Yeah.
And I learned something from my 40-year-old son.
Amen. Amen.
And I think that's the way we need to look at it. It's a two-way deal.
Bingo. It is and that's what happens in blessing. At its best, it is always a two-way deal. It's not I'm so high and mighty and smart and I'm blessing you. It's coming together and creating space for one another, which is what the younger generation needs more than any piece of advice we could ever give them, right? I think of it, if you think of the sermon you're about to hear is about casting the net and getting the big catch of fish. And Stephen does a wonderful job of using that as a metaphor for the church and how we together carry the weight, right? It's a great metaphor. But I think we could expand it to what you're talking about too, Andy, because the younger generations are carrying a lot of weight. It's a lot of weight. We don't carry as much anymore. They're worrying about their children, worrying about the economy, their jobs, the war, getting drafted. Now they're about no, it's happening. 18 to 25-year-old men automatically being put into a resource so that the draft can happen. So there's a lot that they are carrying, and if you use Stephen's metaphor, what I like about his metaphor is standing on the sidelines and giving advice is not going to do anything to help with the weight. They need us to carry weight. And we're just not good at that. We're really good at wanting to give advice and counsel, because I'm so smart. I know so much,
I've lived so long.
I've lived so long. Let me say, for me, blessed are those who mourn means something very different to me today than it did 30 years ago. I don't like death any more than the next person, okay? I mean, it's not, I don't wish for it. I don't, pray for it to come to anyone. But I spend a lot of time with people who are dying and people who are grieving. I mean, that's what I do. And there is a vulnerability and a beauty and a tenderness that comes in grief that doesn't come any other way. It doesn't come any other way. And a zest for life and an appreciation for the fragility of life really isn't possible without losing something. And so I don't see, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted, looks very different to me today than it did as a young person, because I really do think, as horrible as it is to grieve, that it unlocks beautiful new things in us. Is that a terrible thing to say? I just believe it. And I've seen it. Not always. I'm just saying that it can. It can release a lot of things. Any others that you see?
Would you like to comment about the poor in spirit, what that really means?
Well, we're going to actually start on that next week because we have an idea. You may not agree with this, but we have an idea. We have an idea. And so let me just, I'll tantalize you and say, wait, come back next week, and that's the one we're going to start with next week, okay? Y'all have been very patient with us. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.